Garnet Lewis writes to me, years ago, I heard you talk about a potentially awful audio show experience. CES, I think. Indeed it was. And I don't know if I heard this at CES or in an interview. It was funny and interesting, and I think the audience of Paul's post and Paul's Ask Paul would get a kick out of it. And are there lessons to be learned in the way you overcame the crisis? In case you forgot, it was a new amp that developed big issues at the show as you were setting up. Well, yeah, I remember that. And that's not exactly correct. So, because we are in our 50th anniversary year, I have committed to, as much as I can, go back and remember all these various products, how we got here, how they were made, and all of that. So I thought that was a perfect opportunity to talk about the Model One Amplifier. And by its very name, as you can imagine, it was our first power amplifier, the Model One, right? Okay. It's heavy, so I guess I can, well, it's not that heavy. Oh, here we go. All right. Okay, here she is, the Model One. Just a simple box, a faceplate, and it was our first amplifier. 70 watts a channel. And this is the one that he's referring to with the funny story. Okay. So at this time, this was probably, oh gosh, 75, 76. We needed an amplifier. We had already switched from this phono stage and this linear control center over to our now black beauties, which were like this. Same thing, just different chassis. And people said, well, hey, if you're already making the preamplifier and the phono stage, where's the amplifier, right? Okay, well, an amplifier is not a whole lot different than a preamplifier in its construction and design, except, well, at least that's what we thought. Because circuit-wise, it's sort of the same thing. You have a diff pair, you have a gain stage, and you have an output stage. Every preamplifier we've ever made had the same thing. Discrete, differential pair on the input, current source below it, gain stage, current source or not, and then the output stage, which is a complementary pair that are pushing and pulling the signal out. Well, in theory, that is correct, but the difference is, of course, in a power amplifier, you are essentially having two sections, where in a preamplifier you only have one. You have a voltage gain stage and then a current buffer on the output to make sure that that voltage doesn't get messed up when you drive another piece of equipment. Well, in a power amplifier, yes, you have that same voltage gain stage. The voltage is a lot higher, where normally we would have, I don't know, 7, 8 volts in the output. Now all of a sudden you need 50 volts or so. So that right off is different. And then you need something that converts voltage to current in a big way. That's where we get our watts. So the output stage has all this stuff like drivers and big buffers, heavy power supply. It's a lot more difficult to build than a preamplifier, by a lot. I was doing almost all the work on it. Of course, Stan was very instrumental in the design, but I was, call it playing chief tech, actually doing the building of this thing. And it had died a lot. And when a power amp dies, it is spectacular. When a preamp dies, it just goes blink. You're like, damn. And you got to change a transistor. When a power amp goes, right? You get flames and fire because there's a lot of power there. So when we were building the Model One, I had it on, this is the funny story he's talking about. I had it on the bench, had it working. I was trying to set the bias, which is, you've heard, you know, a class AB amp and a class A amp. Well, that bias is how much idle current is running through the output stage, okay? And there's usually a trim pot in there and what we call a VBE multiplier, which is a device that measures the heat of the heatsink, and as the heat goes up, this VBE multiplier lowers the bias automatically and raises it up when it's cold, that kind of thing. And there's a trim pot on it, and so you got meters hooked up and you're adjusting this thing to get it right. And I don't know what happened. Something happened. I was just tweaking it up. And to set the story up right, Stan is, I don't know who was driving, me or Stan, one of us was driving to the airport to get on a plane to go to Chicago to do the CES show. The car's running, we're running late, I'm doing the final tweak, trunk's open, Stan's sitting around there, come on, gonna be late. And I did something, maybe I dropped it, and the amp blew up. God, well, I'm not supposed to say on YouTube what I said at the time, so I won't say it, but you can just imagine. Delete the expletives. So I thought, well, you know, what am I gonna do? So I took the amp, dumped it into the box that it was going into, grabbed my oscilloscope, grabbed my soldering iron, grabbed my meter, my tools, some parts, dumped it all into the thing, taped it up, threw it in the back of the car, and drove to Chicago. So we have like 2 days of setup. So we get into Chicago. I set up the bench inside of this is in a hotel. It's the Bismarck or something hotel. And the living room of this suite, if you will, that we had our speakers and our stuff, right? So when a customer would walk in, you would walk past the bedroom that would have the door closed, and you'd walk into the living room and you'd see our display, right? And you'd have, I think we had magnaplanar speakers, and I am in the bedroom with my scope and all of this stuff, trying to fix this stupid amplifier so we can play music. Stan is out there doing his best, showing people around, and I thought you guys have an amplifier. You got speakers. Yeah, it arrived late, or whatever he was telling people. I don't know. At one point, somebody opened the bedroom door and saw me in there with a soldering iron. I looked up at him, and he goes, "Oh my God, you build the stuff right here?" Okay, there's your funny story. I did get it running on the first day. We did hook it up, and it played beautifully for the entire 3 days or 4 days of the show at CES. The end of the story is even a little bit worse. We didn't have any RF protection on the input, right? So normally on an input of an amplifier, you have what we call RF protection, which is a little low-pass filter to take out any kind of high-frequency stuff, right? And this is back in the days of CB radio. So I think the very last hour, we're playing music and all that, and somebody down on Michigan Avenue hits his CB radio like that, and it came into the amplifier and just sent it up in smoke and flames. And we thought, all right, well, made it that far. So anyway, that's the story. We finally got back, figured all the problems out, and started producing, and it was one of our more popular amplifiers. Again, 70 watts a channel, and great sounding amplifier, very simple. And next time, if I can remember, I will tell you about the Elite amplifier, which was our integrated, I think it's this one. Yep, and this is basically that with some knobs. And we just added a preamp. It's the same thing, but I'll try and tell you that whole story later on. Okay, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.